Hey everybody, it's Chris, and I've been looking at the subclasses that we just got in the latest Unearthed Arcana, and the survey for these subclasses opens up on Tuesday, so on February 4th. So I encourage you to go and let the design team know what you think of these various subclasses and the design and any changes you would like to see. Today I'm going to be talking about the Winter Walker, which is the Ranger subclass in this Unearthed Arcana. And so I'm going to bring it up on screen right now. I will say, I think overall, this is a pretty good subclass. There are some tweaks, I'm hoping. We'll see. But I think this is a really good start. And we can see here, so Winter Walker, I think, should be relatively clear. We're talking about a cold based ranger. And it says Winter Walkers hone their craft in the bleak and frozen places like Icewind Dale. So if we're talking about the Sword Coast. I've been using the Sword Coast to kind of navigate where these various subclasses would be from, because they're not from the Sword Coast, and neither would this one be. So if you think about Waterdeep, you go north of Waterdeep, and then you got Neverwinter. You go north of Neverwinter, then you got Luskan, and that's like the north end of the Sword Coast. But if you go north of that, that's Icewind Dale, and it's right on that west coast and right at the very north end of Faerun, and it is cold. It's winter there all the time. And so we begin with three third level features, and they're all pretty good, I think. Well, two out of three are pretty good. One's okay. But yeah, the first one is Frigid Explorer. You gain two things. First, we're going to get resistance to cold damage. No surprise there, right? You would expect this subclass to have that, and it gets it. Second is Polar Strikes. When you hit a creature with a weapon, you can deal an extra d4 cold damage to the target, which can only take the extra damage once per turn. This extra damage ignores resistance to cold damage. That's very big, because a lot of creatures do have resistance to cold damage, so being able to bypass that is quite good. Not a lot of creatures, or yeah, a fairly small number of creatures are immune to cold, but resistance to cold is fairly common. So being able to ignore that, great. When you reach Ranger level 11, it increases to a d6. So the damage here isn't huge. This is similar to the damage you'd get with the Fey Wanderer Ranger. The thing I would like to point out here is it says the creature that can only take this damage once per turn. So that means if you make your first attack and you hit a creature, you do your extra damage. If it goes down and you switch to another creature and hit it, it can also take the damage, right? It's only a single creature that can only take it once per turn. Doesn't mean we can't inflict this damage more than once per turn if we're hitting multiple targets. And yeah, so overall, this is okay. Resistance to cold damage is decent, and the extra damage, I mean, when you're a ranger, you will take extra damage. Then our second third level feature is Hunter's Rhyme. This one's good. I've highlighted here, when you cast Hunter's Mark, this is a theme here. This subclass really pushes Hunter's Mark by making it much, much better than it normally is. And we begin at level 3. When you cast Hunter's Mark, you gain temporary hit points equal to a d10 plus your ranger level. Additionally, while a creature is marked by your Hunter's Mark, it can't take the disengage action. So we get a nice little debuff on whatever creature we've got our Hunter's Mark on, but we also get those temporary hit points. And this is actually a lot of temporary hit points. At level 3, I mean, it's a d10 plus 3, but at level 3, that's quite a bit. And at level 3, we'll be able to cast Hunter's Mark for free twice. So that's 2 times. As a bonus action, you could give yourself those temporary hit points. But like if we take this to the top degree, at 20th level, we can cast Hunter's Mark for free 6 times. And each time it would be a d10 plus 20 temporary hit points as a bonus action. So talk about a good way to make your ranger far, far more beefy than they were before. And that is one of the weaknesses of the ranger. The ranger's defense is not super strong. They have a good hit die, but not a lot beyond that. So this really does help. So I think that's a really nice feature for level 3. And then level 3, Winter Walker spells. So we're going to get some free preparations. We get Ice Knife at 3, Pass Without Trace at 5. Pass Without Trace is a great spell, but rangers can get it anyways. Remove Curse is occasionally useful. Ice Storm and Cone of Cold. And I have to say, overall, I'm not thrilled with this list. I totally understand why most of these are here. Ice Knife, Ice Storm, Cone of Cold, obvious, right? Don't know if I love them on a Ranger. So, yeah, I don't love this list, even though I get, the decisions that were made here. Nevertheless, these are free spells. So, it's just above and beyond the spells you normally have. So it's still, an okay thing to have. But as far as extra spells go for Rangers, this is on the weaker side. Though, keep in mind, we have a couple Ranger subclasses that don't get any extra spells. So overall, I'd say level 3, we do quite well. And I think Hunter's Rhyme is the one that kind of sticks out as being particularly strong. And then we move on from there to level 7. We get Fortifying Soul. It says your experience surviving harrowing environments allows you to bolster your allies in addition to yourself. When you finish a short rest, you can choose a number of creatures you can see equal to your wisdom modifier. So I would expect that to be 3 to 5, depending on your level and what you've been focusing on. Chosen creature regains hit points equal to a d10 plus your ranger level, and has advantage on saving throws to avoid or end the frightened condition for 1 hour. Now, one nice thing I note here is that it doesn't say they have to have spent any hit dice, so they can get the healing up and beyond whatever hit dice they spent, or spend no hit dice and recover a fair amount of hit points. I mean, even at level 7, this is a d10 plus 7. So just like with Hunter's Rhyme, the scaling here is pretty good. And this is to several creatures. And then, but it says once you use this feature, you can't use it again until a long rest. So it's only going to be 1 short rest per long rest. And the creatures will have advantage to avoid or end the frightened condition for 1 hour. So if you know you're going into a situation where you're going to have to make saves versus being frightened, this would be a good time to use the feature. This is all right. But honestly, when I look at this subclass, this is the one level I could, I would like to see maybe something a little bit extra. It's all right. But then we get to level 11. Level 11 I think is pretty cool. So when a creature hits you with an attack roll, you can take a reaction to force the creature to make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, the creature has the frightened condition until the end of your next turn, which is okay. While frightened, a target speed is reduced to 0 feet. That's very, very good. So you can completely destroy the mobility of an enemy for 1 round, and you're using your reaction to do it. You can use this reaction a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Now, I have to say, I would love if there was a damage boost here, because Rangers could sure use a damage boost at level 11, and this is not a damage boost. But this is a good defensive boost or tactical boost, so I still think it's a good feature. But I would love to see something for damage at level 11. I guess... our Frigid Explorer Polar Strikes have gone from a D4 to a D6. That's not very much. So I think in my feedback I am going to mention that I would like to see something substantial at level 11 to increase the offense of a Ranger. But we see something, the level 15 feature, Frozen Haunt, is fantastic. This might be the best 15th level feature for any Ranger. It says, when you cast Hunter's Mark, so once again, we're going to improve our Hunter's Mark. We've already improved it. Remember, we can get the temporary hit points whenever we use it. Any creature we have Hunter's Mark on can take the disengage action. But also, now when we cast it, we adopt a ghostly, snowy form. This form lasts until the spell ends. And boy, this is good. While you are in this form, you gain the following benefits. And once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest, unless you expend a 4+ level spell slot. No action required. So, Frozen Soul, you have immunity to cold damage. Wow. Immunity to damage is great. No matter what type you get, straight out immunity is very rare and very good. When you adopt this form, and at the start of each of your subsequent turns, each creature of your choice in a 15-foot emanation, so about the size of a Spirit Guardians, originating from you, take 2d4 cold damage. 2d4 cold damage isn't a lot, but there is no save, so it's just average 5 points of damage to every creature within 15 feet that you want for the entire duration of your Hunter's Mark at the start of each of your turns. So that's... At minimum, that should be +5 to your DPR. So we do get a damage boost at level 15, and 5 DPR is nothing to sneeze at. And it should be area of effect, so we should be hitting more than one creature with it. So, I mean, the damage isn't high, but I think this is all right. And put on top of immunity to cold damage, it's good. But we also get partially incorporeal, and this is very good too. Immunity to grappled, prone, and restrained conditions. And this, remember, this is for the entire duration of your Hunter's Mark. You can move through creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain. So we can walk through walls and all that kind of stuff. If we end our turn in a solid object, we get shunted, so don't do that. But that's very useful. So we have immunity to 3 different conditions, immunity to a damage type, and an emanation that does continual damage. But we can only do it once per long rest. But here's the thing. We're 15th level. We have 4th level spell slots. We can cast Hunter's Mark with a 3rd level slot, and it lasts for 8 hours. So we get these benefits for 8 hours. And by level 15, we have reached the level in Ranger where we cannot lose concentration on our Hunter's Mark from taking damage. So even if we take a ton of damage, we still hold our concentration. You can still lose the concentration if you're knocked unconscious, though that's not going to be so easy because we're going to, at level 15, we're going to have 5 uses of Hunter's Rhyme for a D10 plus Ranger level in temporary hit points. Very, very good. And once we get to level 17, 24 hours for a Hunter's Mark, which I'd do, right? Like, why not just concentrate on Hunter's Mark all day? Concentration, that's very, very difficult to break. And we're getting so many things from it. We're getting the temporary hit points when we cast it. We're getting the creatures can't take the disengage action. We're getting immunity to cold damage. We're getting the emanation that does the damage every turn. We're getting immune to grapple, prone, and restrained. We're getting the ability to move through solid objects, and we haven't even gotten to what Hunter's Mark actually does. So, yeah, that's just a huge amount they've added on to Hunter's Mark. And if you're going to pressure the Ranger to use Hunter's Mark, I do think making Hunter's Mark excellent is a good strategy, right? Because it's there on your character sheet. You kind of don't want to ignore it or it feels bad. But if you cast it, it can feel bad too because you could be concentrating on better things. But what is better than all of this, right? What spell would we be concentrating on that is going to give us nearly what all this is going to give us? And being that we could do it once and then 24 hours, and then, you use your other spell slots on spells that don't use concentration. So, yeah, I think this is quite strong. The level 15 feature is very potent. I would like to see something at level 11, and level 7 is okay, but it could potentially use a boost as well. But overall, I still think this is one of the stronger Ranger subclasses. I guess I'm just a little biased that I kind of think Rangers should get a little bit extra. And I think they've got a little bit extra here. And I'd maybe massage it a little bit. Like Frozen Haunt gives you a lot. What if they took a little bit of it? Like, the partially incorporeal is pretty good on its own. Maybe that should be level 15 and Frozen Soul should be like worked into level 11, or at least the 15-foot emanation part of it could be worked into level 11 or something like that. I also think that the 2d4 cold damage from Frozen Soul, it would be nice if it also ignored resistance to cold damage. That's another thing. So there's some things I do want to mention in the feedback. But this is a good start, I think. There's a lot of good ideas here, and there's a lot of cool stuff that I do want to try out. So I think Winter Walker is a hit. I hope it doesn't hit the publication exactly as printed here. I'd like to see a little bit of massaging towards the middle levels. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this subclass. So that is the Winter Walker. And the next subclass I will be talking about is the Scion of the Three, which is a rogue subclass for evil characters. So we will talk about that. I mean, I think it really does whisper evil. So we'll talk about that one in my next video. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.